Hello everyone. This is OK here. And what we have for you today is a recap of Season 4 of the Crazyhouse League, which is a league organised over on the ZH-er0 Slack. And the purpose of the Slack is dedicated to playing slower chess, because online chess is usually bullet and blitz, and it's trying to slow things down a bit. And one of the offshoots of this ZH-er0 is a Crazyhouse League, where instead of playing the usual 3+2 or even 1+0 even, or even 4+2, we play 5+5 or slower. And thanks to Colwem, we now have a Crazyhouse Team League website. So for the first time, the Crazyhouse League has become a team competition. Colwem's programmed this website for us, and we hope we'll be able to keep this going for a long time. But Season 4 was a bit of a trial season, so we didn't want too many people to get involved. But Season 5 was just going to be it's just going to be starting very soon, so it's a great opportunity to join in. So just to see, Season 4 there were 20 players participating full-time. And there were 4 teams of 5 players. So there's Board 1, Board 2, Board 3, Board 4, and Board 5. And these are the 4 teams. The Team 1, which never changed its name, they're just always Team 1, Finish Them, King in Hand, and Rapid Variance Only. So 4 teams. Because there are only 4 teams, that meant there would only be 3 rounds. So it was effectively an all-play, all round robin team competition. And then there were also some alts who could substitute in if a player couldn't make a given week. So just to give the rundown of the teams, Team 1 had JK the Bullfrog on Board 1. And actually, just to say something about team selection. So how teams will be selected in future is still uncertain. But the way it was done in Season 4 is we had 4 standout players whom we managed to get to join the ZH-er0 Slack. So I'll be doing a recap of some of the positions, and it's quite a good introduction to Crazyhouse, but I'm just giving an introduction to the league first. So we had 4 of the very best players in the world. JK the Bullfrog, the Finisher, and Mugwort, all top 10 players. Rapid Variance, which is very close to top 10 as well. JK the Bullfrog, at the time he joined, he was the #1 player on Lichess at that time, the Finisher and Mugwort, and Rapid Variance. So we had 4 standout players, so we decided that they should be the Board 1s, and we got each of the Board 1s to choose a Board 2 in reverse order of strength. So Rapid Variance got first choice of Board 2, so he got Rapid Variance only. Mugwort got second choice of Board 2, and so on. So we had a sort of snake selection process where these players are selected first, and then these players were selected in this order, in reverse order. So, and then like this, and like this. And so the idea is that the best Board 1 would then get the weakest Board 2, although it didn't really turn out quite that way, and would then get the strongest Board 3, and so on. Interestingly, these ratings are still updating, so these ratings are actually the live ratings now, rather than the ratings at the time when they were selected, because at the time of selection, Fishy Vishy was definitely higher rated than I was. So the strongest Board 1 would get the strongest Board 3 and the strongest Board 5, and the weakest Board 2 and the weakest Board 4. That was kind of the idea. Now, because the team size is odd, that might slightly advantage the higher rated players. But then higher rated players usually have an advantage, so we thought it would be quite a good way of creating balanced teams. So basically selecting the teams like this. And we were lucky that the numbers worked out, so everyone got to participate, and people who wanted to be alts got to be alts. So I should mention ZH-er0 in particular, who founded this league in Season 1 when it was an individual league. And so now just to give you a recap of what happened. So in round 1, King in Hand, so that's Mugwort, Antic, Fahavu, OJB, and Moha369, defeated finished them, which was my team. I was on board 2. The finisher, OK, Erin Yu, Colwem, and Asian 42. And the other result was that Team 1 defeated Rapid Variants only. JK the Bullfrog beat Rapid Variants. Fishy Vishy lost to Variants only. Pepperloo beat Hill RP. Upgoer 5 and Isa Chess drew. And Holloway and High on News drew. So in another match, it was a draw between Mugwort and the finisher, and so on. Just to mention actually how the board, in round 2, King in Hand won again. They beat Team 1. So King in Hand. So the King in Hand had beaten us. In round 2, they beat Team 1 as well, and finished them, beat Rapid Variants only. So at that point, Rapid Variants only had lost both their games, and King in Hand had won both their games. But all changed in round 3, when Rapid Variants only, the supposedly weakest team, beat the supposedly strongest team, King in Hand, and by a margin of 7 games to 3. So quite a stunning result. While finished them, which is my team, beat Team 1. So we managed to equalise on match wins with King in Hand, but because King in Hand lost by a score of 7-3 to Rapid Variants only, this meant on Games 1 tiebreak, we actually finished them, won the league. So, and I had special mention to the finisher, who did very well on board 1. So actually, if you look at the rosters and you click on board 1, you can see that Mugwort and the finisher both scored 4 out of 6, and JK the Bullfrog beat Rapid Variants in round 1, but then lost to both Mugwort and finisher 2-love. While Rapid Variants drew both his games against Mugwort and the finisher. So that was the board 1 situation. On board 2, I drew against both Antic, and it turned out Pawn in Training played 1 game. Variants only was the man of the season, winning 6 out of 6. So that's just a recap of what happened. The most important thing is, how do you register? So I'm just going to share the link in the Twitch chat. So you can see you put your name, your leech estimating, just answer a few simple questions. It says here it's a 3. So first week will be team selection, and it says here 3 weeks of play. But then if we get enough people, we might even have 5 weeks of play. But it will not last more than 6 weeks, the whole season. So let's get straight to some of the games. And just to check that I'm on Lichess, yes, great. Okay, so just to go through some of the games. As we said, the Mugwort and the finisher were the stars on board 1, and in round 1 they faced off against each other. So I thought it would be quite good just to, what I'll do is I'll just show 1 or 2 games from the league, and then I'm going to share some puzzles. But because this is just a quick recap, I might not go through the answers of the puzzles, so then it would be an opportunity for you to pause and think for yourselves the solutions on the video, which I'll post to YouTube. And if you want to try it for yourself, I have both a practice against the computer study with all these puzzles. So it's 43 puzzles, which you can practice against the computer. And then I also have an answer study, and I'll provide you with all the links with the video. Okay, so let's get to it. So round 1, the finisher, who was on my team and was black against Mugwort, and e4, knight f6. So knight f6 is quite common in Crazyhouse. And the reason is, in Alikeen, you're not really afraid of e5 and pawn takes knight, because actually it's quite common to sacrifice that knight for a pawn, and it provides a really nice home for the king, who can just castle in this home, and it means that f6 is safe. So any attacks on h6 are not as strong because f6 is protected. So you can take away the protection of f6, but then there's a pawn on f6. So that's the sort of the logic behind knight f6. So knight f6 is actually a very common move in Crazyhouse, a good alternative to e5. Knight c3, and then he plays e5. So it's just a slight move order switch. And I think the reason for the move order switch, as opposed to the immediate e5, is to discourage the immediate bishop to c4. But I could be wrong because I'm not an e4, e5 player. Okay, so we see the bishop e7 line. So bishop, the classic Italian bishop c5, it turned out to be quite difficult for black to, against at the very highest level, it's very difficult for black to hold equality in that line because it's very symmetrical and white has an advantage. So, so while it is playable, a lot of the best players are switching to bishop e7 or even d6, but this is something more about trends and fashion, because if lines are refuted with bishop e7, then maybe they'll switch to something else. d4, takes, queen takes d4, and d5. So sacrificing a pawn, but just to develop pieces. And okay, knight at c6, takes, check. Okay, so it looks like black has really sacrificed a pawn here and not got so much compensation, but he has quite a lot of pieces in hand, whereas white's just got pawns in hand. So maybe there is some compensation. Knight takes d7, pawn here. Okay, so white is already on the attack. Notice rook here would not be that good because pawn at c7, and you've got 2 pawns on the 7th. Okay, so something to say worth saying something about piece values in Crazyhouse. Abos says, am I closer to 60 or 20? Oh, I'm closer to 20, definitely. I'm still a student in a way, although I'm kind of old. So pawns are much more valuable than normal chess precisely because they can be dropped on the 7th rank. So in fact, while people usually say a piece is worth 3 pawns, in standard chess, in Crazyhouse it's more like a piece is worth 2 pawns. And also there's not so much distinction between knights, bishops and rooks. Rooks are actually amazing in normal chess, mainly because they're so powerful in an endgame. When there are few pieces on the board, they can swing from one side of the board to the other. And that's really the power of the rook. In closed positions, rooks aren't so good, and that hence the exchange sacrifice as being a theme in standard chess. So in Crazyhouse, knights, bishops and rooks are all of similar value, and then queens are worth about 2 of these pieces, 2 of knight, bishop or rook. And the reason for that is because whenever you have a queen on the board, okay, it's the best piece on the board, but it's also a piece that can be harassed, and your opponent could play on their own pieces in hand, attacking that queen. So while the queen is the best piece, it's also the most prone to attack because it's the best piece. And so it's worth about 2 of the other minor pieces. So that's just a quick introduction. So at c7, bishop at d4, just running through the game. Okay, so he's losing a rook for that pawn. So it looks like black has quite a lot of material down. But still quite nice. I mean, still the king is safe, and king safety is quite important. Rook at g3. Now, in this position, and this is actually a positional puzzle in my set of puzzles, the finisher found a very beautiful positional move, and in a way I'm spoiling this puzzle by giving it away. Rook at g3 maybe is a slight mistake because it doesn't really threaten anything. It's very important in Crazyhouse to be always making threats in some way. Or either you're defending your position or you're making some kind of threat. The problem with rook at g3, okay, I can understand completely why he did it, because it defends g2 and defends any, for example, a knight drop on h4 defending g2. But the problem is it doesn't actually attack g7 because the bishop is defending g7. So recognizing that this bishop is actually black's best piece, it's a very logical thing to do to harass that piece, and so that's why you see Stockfish's best move, rook at d2, queen at d2. Our moves all harassing black's best piece. And also that's defending against the bishop takes f2 sack. So rook at g3 was a slight mistake. It turns out the immediate sack on f2 is not so fruitful because although you have pawns, knights and queens, there's no actual drop of the knight in order to continue the attack. So the rook does do a good job in that sense. Actually, worth noting, the immediate castles is probably a mistake. And yeah, we see here, indeed, it is. Because black has got 2 knights and a queen and a diagonal in hand. And there's a very classic mating pattern in Crazyhouse when you have 2 knights and a queen in hand and a diagonal. It's knight at h3, and the point is the king can't move to the corner and not take the knight, because then you have a classic smothered mate trick. But it can't take either, because otherwise the second knight comes to f3, and then you also need a diagonal just to draw this king out, and this is a classic pattern. And now wherever the king goes, if it goes back, it's going to be mated on g2, and if it comes out here, it's actually going to be mated on f3, because this knight is protected. If this knight weren't protected, then you'd go queen at g2, king takes here, and then lay some diagonals on to just cover up the remaining squares. Although sometimes you can't, with the bishop's actually covering. But here it's just mate in 1. So I can actually understand why rook at g3 was played. It's because castles is not possible. So here, as I said, the immediate sack doesn't really bear that much fruit. I mean, just to give some examples, it's not awful, but something like this, it's still an even game. It's actually probably quite still, the white king is quite exposed. It's still probably quite a difficult position for white to play. But the move the finisher found was even better, which is queen at b6. And the reason this is such a good move is it puts pressure on b2 as well as f2, as well as providing coverage, defending black's queenside. So it's looking at a lot of squares. And just to mention here, castles. So when I shared this with GSVC, he was worried, by playing queen at b6, surely that's too slow because then white can castle. But actually, you can actually sack the queen even on f2. And as Abel says, it looks really scary for white, that sack on f2. This is even better because, okay, we don't have the queen in hand anymore, but we're going to be picking up a rook, potentially with check. I mean, Stockfish is saying -13, and the more it evaluates, like the worse it's going to get. I mean, it's saying king e3 at the moment. The problem is pawn at f4, king takes f4. So if you did a move like this, look at f2, and why can't the king just step back? So can we cover these? It's thinking bishop b6 check, but why can't we just cover? So it's still mate in 3. Yeah, it's still not. I'm not seeing it immediately, but apparently knight at c4 is mating. Okay, so that king takes. So king takes. Oh, the rook is protected. I'm such an idiot. Oh, so, okay. So king here is forced. That does change things a lot. And how do we mate here? So it's a mate in 2. I should be able to find this. Let's see if we can practice our mating skills. Squiggly Doodler says knight comes over. Yeah, so we want a knight coming over. Oh, that is pretty, isn't it? Knight here, pawn takes knight, knight takes pawn, and the bishop cuts off. So that's an example of, yeah, why this is already so dangerous for white. And if the king ever goes to a square like here or here, there's knight takes rook, picking up the rook with check, and the king is really lacking defenders around it. So it's almost mating, if not mating. So white didn't castle. White played at e3, very good move. And now we have the idea of queen at b6, takes, and pawn at b2. Interesting idea, by the way, is why not put the queen here, so that after pawn at e3 we have takes, queen takes, block, and queen takes rook. This is a very interesting point. But tempo is important in Crazyhouse, and while that does win material, it's quite hard to get that queen back into play. and in the meantime, there would be some activity on the queen side. So maybe I'll just quickly go look at that variation. So queen here, pawn here, takes, takes, takes. Bishop at d2, say, queen takes rook. This is quite an interesting position, still quite even. White doesn't have that much in hand, but white does have initiative, and initiative counts for a lot. Very important question from Squiggly Doodler. If you're interested in joining the Team League, this is the registration form, and I'll just post it again in the Twitch chat. This is because it's on the Lichess 4545 Slack. The philosophy of this league is slow time control. So the board 1s play 5+5, the board 2s play 6+6, board 3s play 7+7, board 4s 8+8, and board 5s 9+9. The reason for that is this used to be an individual 10+10 league, mainly with weaker players. And in this season we got in these guys, and they don't want to play 10+10 for sure. Whereas a lot of the weaker players are quite keen on something slower. And so we decided to have a gradated approach where the weaker players get to play at a slower pace. And the reason for that is when you're not familiar with the game, you simply need more time to work things out, and it makes a lot of sense. So do register if you're interested. We have already 30 people signed up for Season 5, but the more the merrier. And we have some really good new people coming. We've got Schwanat, for example. Little Plotkin signed up as an alt, and some of the old names as well. Gene Simmons as well, whom I don't know much about. So here you see, apparently black is doing nicely, and interesting the move that the engine finds at quite high depth, because while I was chatting it turns out it was thinking. And it shows how important initiative is. It says actually just sack your queen just to try and get some initiative. And this is fascinating, that this would work. Pawn at d2, bishop takes d2, rook at b1 or rook at a1, and because white only has queens in hand, and this is the problem, he can't really block, and he can't step up because why can't he step up? Here, check. So okay, why can't we check here? Okay, so pawn takes pawn is a problem because knight at f4, if you take it, knight at d4 check takes. Do we have a nifty mate? Okay, I'm going down the rabbit hole here. Knight at d4, king d4. Oh, we got so many knights we can swing this knight back, can't we? In fact, we got a new knight. Knight here, stopping the king from escaping. So yeah, the Crazyhouse is really beautiful with these mates. Oh gosh, I lost. So actually, this is so we're looking at a kind of a variation. We're looking at a variation if instead of queen at b6 went queen at c5, and we're saying king can't step up like this because of this move, and you can't take with the pawn because of this very beautiful mate. But at this point you could also step up with the king. That would be reasonable. But you can keep on pushing the king out into the open, and now do we have a mate? We have knights in hand. Well, we want a diagonal, like a pawn here would be checkmate. Oh, okay. So knight here is checkmate because of this bishop covering everything off. So that's why you can't take with the pawn. And if you take with the king, then I'm going to have to use the engine because otherwise I'll take ages to try and think things through. It turns out it would be a draw unless you find the mate, which is bishop at c4, and the idea is knight at e2 if you don't take it. And after you do take it, knight at e5. Okay, so the plan is to have two knights here and here. This is very beautiful because, and this is a really pretty pattern, by the way. So whenever you have two knights which are separated by three squares like this, notice that they control, this knight here controls those two squares, and that knight there controls those two squares. So together they control a square. This is a very pretty pattern in Crazyhouse. So if you take with the pawn, and maybe we'll promote that variation, you just go bishop at c4, And the reason is just to get the king away from this square so that we can put a knight there when we're ready. And we're lucky that this knight is protected. So that is made. So, wow, I mean, pretty hard to find. Okay, so that's why you can't step up. So he's forced to block. And then, okay, and then it goes on. You could take a free queen, you could do other things. Knight at d3, c takes d3, then take a free queen, because then you've got a knight at c2 maybe. So he has to take, rook takes, bishop takes, knight at c2 is indeed the move, and Stockfish is seeing some mates here. So while I said that bishop b6, king d1, and pawn e8, okay, I shouldn't really just play through Stockfish's moves, because that doesn't really help one learn. So knight to c2 here. I think the point is we have a lot of pieces in hand. I think that's really the message here. But bishop here, why can't we just take it? Because then we're drawing the king out too much. King b2. So yeah, we've got bishop coming out here if we take it, and if we take the other one, we have knight at a1 and a queen coming to c2. So this is, I mean, even here it's not obvious that there's a mate, but we do have a lot of pieces in hand. So even finding the mate in this position is quite interesting. I mean, I'll just go hashtag mate here at knight c2, because it's probably quite a good exercise to do this as a practice against a computer puzzle. There are a lot of variations to calculate, and so I think I would get hugely distracted if I do them now. But if we just backtrack a second, and this is why calculation is important in Crazyhouse. So what we found is this queen at takes c1 move is actually a really amazing move, which means that bishop takes c6 is actually leaving things a bit unprotected at the back, but the second best moves are all much worse. So what we've actually found from this little investigation, we have a little bit of a surprise. This queen at c5 may actually be a better move if we went to depth 30 or depth 40, simply because there are hugely attacking mating ideas with queen takes rook and sacking the queen on the bishop. Okay, so that was some really deep stuff. So hopefully that doesn't put you off Crazyhouse, because of course no one can see that deep. Not even the engines can see that deep. But I think that it shows the beauty of the game. So the finisher went for, instead, this and a pawn at b2. And of course that was the idea of putting the pawn at b6, is putting pressure on b2. Takes, and he is in. White quickly castles to get out. But of course that means he has to lose his rook to a fork. You have to always be careful when you castle. If you put a queen or a piece here, it is likely to be forked. But he probably thought that, well, a rook and a knight are worth about the same, and maybe this gives me some kind of protection around my king. Black castled, queen at d2, just providing defense against any mating attacks. So notice that if you do nothing in this position, like pawn here, then there are potential mating attacks with even rook at g1. So for example, maybe rook at g1 isn't working immediately, but for example, if you did this, rook at g1 is, I'm sure, working now. Rook at g1 straight away. Oh, it is not working. No, knight at f2 is better. Okay. Yeah, I see. So queen takes rook distracts the rook. So the idea of rook at here is that this rook can't take, because always there's a smothered mate. And that is, if the king takes, then you get to start putting pieces on with check. But apparently white doesn't quite have enough. Knight here check, king comes out, and it's not as strong as I thought. And the point is, once the rook is distracted, the f2 square is free. So knight drops, rook drops, and so on. But we got a little bit distracted. So obviously the queen here, the purpose is really to cover f2, which is an entry point into white's position, but it also it has an eye on the black knight, which is hanging. Okay, so the finisher goes straight for an attack. So of course queen takes knight would be a mistake because knight at f2 would come in, takes, and I think there's enough material there to mate. So more protection for f2. He defends his knight by moving it out of the way. So this is the kind of position where black has got a slight edge, but it's quite difficult to find a way in. So I think it's quite instructive to see how he did find a way in. He's laying on his pieces attacking the queen. This is a really important idea in Crazyhouse. You harass the queen, and it's just you just get to put. He had all these pieces in hand, and he's able to lay them on with tempo by hitting the queen, to such an extent that that J.K. the Bullfrog even just sacks his queen because he just doesn't want to keep on losing tempi in this way. I mean, if he did a move like this, then actually I can't see any immediate attacks on the queen. Oh, there's rook takes g2 apparently. Is very dangerous. And then f3 is slightly weakened as well, and so on. So yeah. So he sacked his queen, but this means black has got quite a large material advantage. Just clearing away for safety. And at this point, black just tries to grind away. Now actually, bishop takes c3 turned out in retrospect to be a bit of a mistake because the queen was a little bit out of action. It turns out this move actually activates the queen along the long diagonal. Quite smart. He doesn't actually take the bishop immediately. He takes the rook because if the bishop took the queen, you take this rook, and you're already in on white's position. So again, initiative is more important than material. So bishop takes c6. And his idea is if queen takes c6 at d3, he's saying is the idea. What's the idea of that? At d3, because if bishop takes d, what's wrong with bishop takes d3? C takes d3. Okay, so yeah, of course. Yeah, so d3. So he's just defending everything. Yeah, so he's taking the pawn as a defensive thing. So you go straight away takes, and then takes back. And now the queen is eyeing this long diagonal, it turns out. There's still two blockers, but you'll see how it opens. So first, try and undermine g2. Okay, we get it clear, and now we're in. Queen comes in, and now there's nothing on the back rank. So again, we're going to lose our queen, but he can't afford to take the queen. So if he took the queen, we have knight here. Oh, no, knight here doesn't work. But rook takes here, king takes. Well, we have enough to mate. So he tries to defend this sort of f2 mate ideas, because that's the immediate threat. Once you won the knight here is a mate threat, so he blocks it. Takes, still works, check. The rook can't take because it's pinned, so this rook has to take, and it's too much. So it was a great win from the finisher against Mugwort. And winning is black, so because Crazyhouse has a reputation for being theoretically one for white, so black won. So game 2, Mugwort played the Dutch defense. I played quite a few games with Mugwort in the Dutch, but we play a slightly different line, which I'll just share. We play something like here, here, bishop here, and then I do this move. Oh, sorry. He does this sort of, okay, I'm happy with that diagonal. Takes, and now a very interesting move. He goes for this, willingly giving up the queen in order to have a counterattack on my king. Pawn here, check. If you move the king is really awkward on that square. White can just develop and try to get an attack on that king. So giving back the queen is quite normal. Knight takes queen. This is the sort of starting position where both sides have their queens, both sides' kings are pretty open. And yeah, so it's quite interesting. White would love to be able to, for example, get a pawn here and a queen here, or get his knight in. Black, meanwhile, has got this weak square d2, but occupied for the moment by the knight, so no immediate attack. So if we look at the database, this is a very interesting position. Let's say knight takes d2 has been played 28 times, and 57% win for white. So it's quite an interesting line. Okay, but instead we go d5, which is a very uncommon move. It's only been played 65 times out of hundreds of different moves that have been played. And it's a 55% win for black. So, but it's quite an interesting move that the finisher chose d5, and it's takes, queen here, check. So I wouldn't recommend f5 because it does create a weakness on f7, and in Crazyhouse you have to be really aware of weaknesses. But the top players, they know what they're doing a little better, so they know when to how to defend their weaknesses better. And basically, I guess the point of this game was just to show, so this was, maybe at this point, e3 is slightly more solid than e4, but e4 is more aggressive. And the problem is, yeah, e4 allows some kind of threat on f2, blocks, takes, and this is probably the mistake. I was just thinking, actually, a game is either won by a brilliancy, like a super mate you find, or it's lost by a mistake. So the finisher won game 1 with the queen b6 move and a very good positional play. And he lost game 2 with this move, knight at b3. So it turned out the best move would be something like knight at d6, disturbing the king, and then just, yeah, it's not clear, but it's still an unclear position. But with knight at b3, the reason this doesn't work is because black has got two sacrifices. Bishop takes pawn and queen takes knight, and together they can launch a devastating attack on the white king. So, and it doesn't matter which order you do them in. Take this, and you just lay your pieces on in attacking poses. So that's threatening a queen fork implicitly. So it's more threatening than it looks. So he defends the queen fork, takes, puts a bishop on, gets his king safe. Meanwhile, the white kings are still a little bit exposed. And he's going to get in on these light squares. The move here is knight at c2, at which point queen takes knight was the necessary move to avoid immediate disaster. But it doesn't really work because you can shift the king over. You don't take the queen immediately, you first shift it over and then take it with check. That's an important principle in Crazyhouse. You want to maintain initiative, so you don't necessarily grab material. You want to grab the material with tempo. And now you have mate. Because queen here, queen takes rook. If you take the queen, you're mated. If you hide away here, you're also mated. So, very pretty mate. So, the finisher didn't take the knight, but that falls into mate in one immediately. And notice again, knights, which are 3 apart, are very good because they control a lot of squares. Okay, so that was game 2. So the finisher and mugwort drew. The third game I wanted to show you very quickly is why you should not play the Sicilian. And this was a board 3 match between Pepelu as white and Fahavu as black. Fahavu chose let's play a Sicilian. It's a very bad idea to play the Sicilian in Crazyhouse because c7 is a weakness. And black just targets c7. And that's the story of the game. I mean, in terms of material, both sides are equal, but black's position is just wrecked. And it's very hard to get out of it. Stockfish is saying plus 25, and you see materially it's equal. There's no obvious way of winning material for white. It's just his position is wrecked. White goes for a queen trade, so queen at e8. So Fahavi does an incredibly good job actually, just holding on. So no forcing mate immediately. Defends. So now the rook defends the queen at e8 mate. So again, Pepper is having to work for this. Takes, drops a pawn. And again, this knight is doing a good job. So knights, again, notice knights 3 apart are actually quite good defensively as well, because they're covering a lot of squares. King to e8, because he sees that this knight is guarding any immediate problem. Okay, so white just tries to... Okay, so at this point, just trying to sack to get in. So if knight takes d8, e takes d8, queen, king here. Because the bishop was protecting, the queen stays alive. So that would have been one variation. He went for this instead, to sack the queen here, put the rook here, got another queen. And again, white is sufficiently safe that really there's nothing black can do. Tries to defend, but there's a nice mate coming. So rook here, check. The king can't escape because the bishop seals it off. So that's it. Hi there, Kawaii Serb in the Twitch chat. Okay, so should I show you anything else? Yes. The last game I'll show you is a game by probably the best 2 players on board 2. And they were Antic and Variance Only. And Variance Only won all his 6 games in the league, so he's which no other player did, so he is definitely the man of the season, and really helped his team. Now, Variance Only was, he's famous as white for playing a4, rook a3 and swinging the rook over to g3, launching a nice attack on either g7 or f7. But as black, he doesn't play a5, rook h6 anymore because it turns out black is sufficiently behind in development that there are problems. And it was very interesting actually the line he played. He chose in this game against Antic. He didn't know it, he came up with it himself, but this is actually a line played by Fieglud, who's an American grandmaster, in the Crazyhouse World Championship in 2018, so last year, against Mugwort, who's participating as a board 1 in this league. It was a very early morning match, so this idea is you take this knight, exchange knight, so it seems like a crazy thing to do, because black has not developed any pieces at all, he's just gone knight here, and he's not going to develop anymore, he's just going to stick that knight on again. And actually what happened in that match with Mugwort is, Mugwort as white obviously had never seen this opening before, but he's very good on his feet, and he got into a commanding position as white. But also Mugwort was a bit slow, and it was 7 o'clock in the morning, so he was still a bit sluggish. And although it was 3+2, so he's getting 2 seconds extra for every move, Fieglud turned up the pace and actually won that game 1 of their 10-game match on time. And he continued to use this opening in subsequent games. But then, of course, Mugwort knew what was coming, so he'd had a few seconds to think about it. It was game 1. He ran out of time thinking, what should I do? So it turns out the best move for white here is indeed just to put the queen back on d1 to protect against this knight fork. Okay, so black better develop, and does so. Again, you're always happy to give away this knight just to open up your bishops and get some fast development, and also to make a nice home for your king. But Variance Only goes for a straight, so I would recommend e takes f6. E takes f6 is a natural move, pretty decent for black. Yeah, black is minus 1.8, it turns out. But Variance Only went for something quite interesting. This is not a bad move, but it's committing to keeping your king in the center of the board, which is fine. And it's also opening up this g-file, so it's basically trying to prevent the white king from overcastling. So there are merits to this move. It's quite strategically interesting. I think Stockfish doesn't necessarily recognize the strategic benefits of this move, because white maybe has to keep his king in the center, but he doesn't have the same pawn protection as black does. So it's a very interesting idea. So black only has one active piece. So the reason why knight at e2 is the best move is it would clear away white's. I mean, so if you just had takes, then this would be no good at all. So whenever you do an exchange, you have to think who's benefiting from that exchange. And the problem with this move is black could just stick a knight back on e4, and well, it turns out here you can just take the bishop. But the point is that that would be no good at all. But after knight takes knight, this knight is actually, you can just take this pawn, takes, and then queen takes, and we have a threat on here. I don't know actually. What about knight here? So this isn't completely clear. Why is black? Why would this be okay for white? Queen takes e2. Okay, sorry, I made a mistake. It's knight at e2 that is the right move, not knight to e2. Yeah, knight at e2. So it's putting one of your pieces in hand on the board is the motivation for that move. And if knight takes knight, then knight takes b5. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So then if you take, you're taking back with check, you've got queen, and so white is getting... So this is quite a subtle idea that Stockfish finds. I shouldn't dwell too much on that. Bishop takes b5 is natural. Takes. So white's losing a piece, but getting a little bit of initiative. Okay, knight a5, a little bit... So this idea of dropping a pawn here, but rook here defends it, and the knight's not very central. So the reason with this whole sacrifice, yeah, black is actually okay. But yeah, if black had a bishop for c6, then white would be. If white had a bishop for c6, white would indeed be very happy. Okay, so knight here maybe is a bit slow. Queen takes pawn. So going for a counterattack. Pawn at d7, pawn at b7. Okay, pawn at b7 is natural. Pawn at c6 again, just trying to get some counterattack going. Okay, but black's attack is dangerous. C takes d7, bishop takes. Pawn here. Takes. Yeah. Okay, so this is a very kind of critical position where both sides are attacking each other. And here variance only takes the knight because he's forced to. And it's again one of those positions where it's very natural to take the queen, but you lose initiative. And so what happened in the game is he did indeed take the queen, but with two knights and two pawns, black in fact has a mate which variance only found on the white king. The best move is queen takes knight, queen takes rook with initiative, and then defend. And this is this sort of idea. Just go. Try and do some attack. And actually, it could in this situation be white begging for a draw with a move like queen takes a7. There's just a sort of nifty little idea, followed by knight takes f6 check, which would be a smother. Knight here check, king here, and black actually can get a draw. Sorry, white can get a draw. That is just a sort of an example of a pretty line that could happen. But I shouldn't look at these computer lines too much. But queen takes here. The point is just so you got initiative and then you can get safe. What happened in the game was queen takes queen, and this was a mistake because knight f3 check draws the king out again, and actually king e1 was slightly safer. Because if king e1, it looks like the king is getting mated, but it's not, because knight f3, the king could run and maybe take this rook. And here, pawn here doesn't quite work because of king takes rook. So actually this would be a draw, apparently. Knight, king f1. Yeah, I don't know. Is it a draw or a win? Knight takes d2. So you're threatening something very dangerous, which is a pawn on the 7th rank promoting to a queen. So you have to take the knight to get out of that check. Knight 2 to f3, and if the king goes here, it gets mated by a pawn, so it has to go here. And again, you can go knight d2 check. You can't take it, or you get a pawn promoted to a queen, which will mate you. So this would have been a repetition. So the point of all that is to say that you can't go do the natural pawn at e2. But there is a move that still mates in this position, a very brilliant move, and that's you rook at g1. And the reason for that is rook takes rook is forced, and now you can go pawn at e2. The king is forced to run out, and there's a double check, winning a rook, and if you follow it through, it turns out this is mating. So if the king takes the knight, it's getting mated. If the king runs up, it's also getting mated. If you block, it's also getting mated. But okay. But having said that, the neatest way to mate was actually to do rook g1 immediately in this position. Rook g1, but anyway. So you can go knight f3 first and then rook g1. And the point is then the king is sealed off basically on the back rank. Or if the king runs up, there is also a very nice mate, which is rook here, knight here, and the king wants to run up here, but you have knight here, stopping it from running any further. So yeah, in all lines, that was mating. But what happened in the game was the king ran up, and that won't do at all. So we can calculate. We have a pawn and a knight. We need to defend this knight. So we check and defend the knight. So the king only has one square to go to. The rook cuts off this file, so we just need to deliver a check, which is not protected. So that would be that one, because the queen would cover this temporarily and delay mate a move, and that's checkmate. Okay, so that was an example of a game between Antics and Variazioni. Very sharp game. Maybe Antic had slightly better chances after queen takes rook, but after this it was a checkmate. Okay, so I think that's been a recap of the Crazyhouse League. So it's time for puzzles and for something a bit, yeah. Now, I'm not sure how many of these puzzles I should do, because there are 43 of them. And of these 43, about 33 of them are going to be mating puzzles. 3 of them are going to be defensive puzzles. 3 of them are going to be counter-attacking puzzles, and 4 of them are going to be positional puzzles. So the majority of them are just mating puzzles. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with this video the link. So in a way, I don't want to spoil the puzzles for you. Yeah, I think I've decided what I want to do. I don't want to spoil the puzzles for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show each of these puzzles for a short amount of time, so you can see. Can you see what white should play here? Okay. And if you're watching the video, you could pause the video and see if you can find the mate for white. Okay, and I'm sure you found it by now, but I don't know. I don't want to spoil it for those who are still looking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the really, yeah, I'm not sure what to do here. Okay, what about this one? Yeah, so this is a mate in 2. This was Asian 42 against High on Hypotenuse. Okay, yeah, and Asian 42 found the mate. This was Pepelu against Erin Yu. Somehow I could just go through the puzzles and try and find them myself, but I feel that would, yeah, I feel that these are sufficiently easy puzzles that they're, I think they're worth you going to the link and trying them out. Even for beginning players, this is just great just to get a feel. And the first ones are going to be really easy, and as they go on, they get a lot more tricky. Okay, next one. So again, pause if you want to have a think about this. This is black to play, and then maybe this is a starting. This is not so easy to calculate in your head. We've got 2 knights and 2 queens. It's kind of situation where white was attacking us and they've run out, and it's time for our counterattack. So this was Mohar 369 against Holloway, and Holloway found the mate with the 2 knights and the 2 queens. And again, it's something really worth trying out rather than saying too much about. And if you're interested in the answers, there's another study I have with answers, but I don't want to share that immediately. But I'll share that with the video. So I don't want to spoil these puzzles. That's my problem. So what to do? What I'll do is I think I'll spoil some of the really difficult ones. This was myself okay against Antic. This is a very pretty one. So can you see a mate in 2? We've got pawn, a knight, queen. Yeah, so pause if you want to have a go and check out. Okay, the next one. Pepperloo found this very beautiful mate as black against Forhava. You've got to always watch out for this. If you're the kind of player who plays very passively, really defensively, doesn't want to let anyone into your camp, then you have to watch out for this. Okay, so pause if you want to have a think and have a go at this one. Erinu against Pepperloo. Okay, this is something a little more like there seem to be a lot of. So whenever you're trying to solve a puzzle, you have to try and think of first of all checking moves. And of course here there are quite a few checking moves. We could have knight here check, rook here check. So lots of different possibilities. Rook here check feels wasteful when we have knight checks, but then we have 2 knight checks, so and then when there's a lot of space around the king, so where would the king go? Well, the king can't go here because always queen here would be checkmate. So king could go here or here. It feels like there are quite a lot of possibilities. At least that knight can't be taken. So what do you do? Maybe let's stick to one possibility. If the king goes here, what would we do? I mean, and then the mate just sort of will find itself because we'd obviously put on something else to check. Or we could even, in this position, we could even do this sort of thing. But there's actually then mate in 2. We can put on a piece here. So the king is driven back to this one, and then another one to mate. Okay, so, okay. I don't want to, yeah, it's difficult because I don't want to spoil it. Up go 5 against Colwem. You always have to watch out for knights here and here covering g1 because it only leaves h1 for the king. And in this situation, king only has 2 squares where it can go to. So if we can deliver a check, that king is going to not have many moves. And the classic thing would be to deliver a check here, the king goes back and deliver another pawn here, and that would be checkmate. So the king definitely has to go forwards. So the king goes forwards. Can you see mate in 1? Okay, so if we check here, unfortunately you could take it, but we have another check here and that's the mate. So I better delete this. So what to do? I think I'll say something about themes. So Colwem against up go f5. Up go f5 should have delivered mate here, and I think he didn't. Something I noticed about his games is he didn't really see the possibility of a kind of mate called the magnet mate. So we've seen a lot of these examples where you do check, 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 and so on. So you're thinking of knight checks, but the problem is all the knight checks are covered. Knight here is covered. And now the magnet mate is a way of dislodging the king to a square where it can be checked more easily. So that is an example of the magnet mate. You draw the king here because at this square we can now check with the knight here. So it might be tempting to move this knight here, but if we now try and calculate a bit, we do move this knight here. If the king were to go back, queen here would be checkmate because the queen takes this whole diagonal and the knight covers g1. But if the king takes the knight, suddenly that knight would have been useful being here So let's use a new knight. Okay, and now mate in 1. So it all became much, much easier by dislodging the king a little bit. So of course you can see the mate in 1. It's queen here, checkmate. Okay, so I think that was quite instructive for up go f5. And that game continued with other mates. So up go f5 made a terrible move with queen takes g3. And just to say, what should up go f5 have done instead of queen takes g3? And the answer is he should have done something. So he had no, he was looking, okay, so obviously you try and do a check. And if necessary, you do a check that kind of dislodges the king to a better square where you can deal with it. So an example of that would have been, suppose he'd done rook at g1. King takes rook, and then queen takes g3. As an example, I mean, maybe there's something better. Yeah, maybe that's not the best. Let's see. So we're trying to calculate what should he have done instead of queen takes g3. So the king doesn't have many defenders. We've got 2 knights, bishop, loads of rooks. Yeah, rook here feels good. If king runs, then the point, basically any sequence of checks would be mating. For example, just pawn here and then just drop rooks. But queen takes g3 wasn't check, and that's the problem with that move. So yeah, I'm trying to find what should black have done instead of queen takes g3. I'm just find something concrete. Let's see. We could go on pawn here. Yeah, pawn here would make a lot of sense. If you just go here, then rook here, check and promote would be mating. If you take the knight, then rook here. And can you run away? I mean, the point is anything will be mating. So I'm struggling because I'm trying to find the shortest mate, but anything will be mating with all these pieces. But after queen takes g3, suddenly, although white only has a knight and 3 bishops, white has initiative, and initiative is so important. In fact, actually what happened was queen check, king here, and now white has mate. So you have to look at checks, and the thing is there are a few possibilities. You could go knight here, check, go bishop here, check. Don't want to go queen takes pawn or just queen takes. Colwyn here did the wrong check. He did knight here check and just loses the knight. What's really useful to see is that this is the king's escape route. So at some point we want to check the king here. And there's only one piece that can check the king here, and that's the knight. So we need to keep the knight. And checking the king there with the knight is really good because it stops the escape route. So we go bishop here, and then the knight is checkmate. If the king had run back, the knight would also be checkmate. So that was an unfortunate miss from Colwyn, who then went on to lose that game. That position actually came out of this position when there is knight here check, just because you want to get your rook or your queen attacking the king. And that's very tempting in these sorts of positions, just to lay your pieces on. So the point of that move was to put a rook or queen here. But hang on, the king will take this knight and might run away. Probably won't get very far. But the way to stop it getting anywhere is to use the queen here and then put the rook here, to really keep the king penned in. So I guess the point of this puzzle is know how to keep the king penned in, and the point of this puzzle is know how to stop it running. The point of the previous one is know how to stop it running away. Okay, I mean, there are going to be loads of these puzzles. Lots of things work here. So rook here was played, and it does eventually mate, because if you take the rook, you're queening. The shortest mate, however, is pawn here check, has to be a check. And I'm sure you can see a mate in 2 in this position. this takes, and queen. So that's a so worth saying if pawn here and king here, we can just queen. And then something quite subtle, because he could block, but we have queen takes g7, checkmate. Okay. This was antics mate against me. Okay, again, I think I'm going to leave these for you to have a go at. So yeah, so I'll leave that antic against me. So you have quite a lot of pieces in hand, and the classic pattern would be knight takes, queen, knight here, queen here. It doesn't quite work because the bishop covers that square, but there's a sort of variation of it that will work because we've got a rook as well in hand. So if you want to pause and have a go, think about it. Next one, Hill RP against Pepperloo. Yeah, Pepperloo found a very nice mate here as black. Got a knight and queen in hand. And that pattern I just told you about does kind of work here. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to calculate. So what's the check? It's going to work. If we check with the queen, that would just drive. So you have to keep the queen in ready for like the edge of the board. That's where the queen is best going to mate. So when you think that, you think, oh, it's going to be a knight check first. And yeah, if the king had gone here, I'd have gone queen here. But I can actually go queen here first and then force that if I wanted. And then we have this knight here. If the king had gone there, it would be queen takes pawn would be the idea, but that's not possible because bishop defends that pawn. So actually, if king had been able to go here, we'd have wanted like pawn here, but actually the king would be running away then. So a little bit tricky. If there was no pawn here, then the king could just keep running. It's not so obvious what to do. So I better delete these answers or they'll appear. So hopefully I've done that. Okay, so for Havu against F Gala, so I should mention F Gala came in as a substitute in round 3. And for Havu here found a very nice mate. So I'll let you pause, see if you can find it. Again, look for checks. And there are only 2 checks, queen here or knight here. Now one of those 2 checks is going to drive the king to safety, and the other one is not. Okay, that should be enough. Okay, next. This one. So again, we want checks. Now bishop takes knight is okay, but it's not quite forcing enough. So queen takes knight is more forcing because it clears away all those pieces around the king. If king takes bishop, which is basically what happened in the game, we have queen here check, king back, and knight here checkmate. So the king is desperate to try and run away, and we want to do something like bring this knight in with check, and if the king runs again, queen here, checkmate. So we're going to bring the knight in with check and he goes here, and then we're not sure. But actually we could just go queen here check. And the idea of that was to go knight here next, and then queen takes queen. Oh, okay. And if you took queen here, it was checkmate. Okay. This was my mate against pawn in training. I streamed my match, so you might have seen this already. Okay, again, if you want to pause and have a think, you can do that. This is pawn in training's mate against me. And I think it's fairly obvious. But this is more, it's fairly obvious the idea. This is more something, it's really good to try against a computer because just to make sure you get it. This is a mate Variance only could have played against me, but he didn't, which is bishop here check, and the idea is to try and distract that rook for queen at h2 mate. And if he blocks, this is very pretty, there's interference. So I can still go queen at h2 mate, and this rook can't take that queen. So it's a very pretty mate. Fahavu against Erin Yu. Okay, now this is a classic mate. So okay, so I'm gonna go over this, because if you haven't seen this before, this is really important. And if you have seen it before, you'll know how to do this, like instantly. Whenever you have two knights, a diagonal, and a queen, you should immediately be thinking, does this work? And basically it will work if f7 and g8 are not protected. And this is indeed what Fahavu did. So you take away the protection for f6, you go into f6, and you draw the king out. Check, and checkmate. You're lucky the bishop's covering that, so there's no running away in this one. So yeah, congratulations Fahavu for finding that mate. Okay, so now we're into the first slightly tricky one. Okay, so let's get chat involved with this one, if there are people here who are keen. Asian 42 against Mobile 369. There is a very pretty mate here. So can anyone in chat see it? It is quite tricky. Because the first reaction when I see this position would be thinking maybe a knight here, drop a knight here, so takes, and win a rook maybe. But the key is to observe that if we could go bishop here, that would be a smothered mate. So the theme of this puzzle is distraction. Can anyone see a way of distracting this rook from protecting f7? I'm not sure if I should spoil this puzzle for you or not, so I think I'll just let you. If no one's going to answer, then I think I'll let you solve it for yourself. Don't know, it is pretty though. I'm sort of torn between wanting to show you answers and wanting to let you try these for yourself. And that's causing me difficulty of how to proceed. Okay, I'm gonna go with you have to work it out. Okay, next one. Holloway against high on Hypotenuse. Okay, I don't see white to play. What does white do here? So this is actually not obvious, because in all these ones we've been saying check, 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 and so on. But here the only check I can see is rook takes pawn, and there's really no follow-up, like queen takes knight. We don't really have enough pieces in hand to get a mate. So this one is, I think it's a move Holloway actually found, so congratulations to him. It's queen takes knight. And the idea is that if pawn take, why is queen takes knight so powerful? Because you wouldn't necessarily sacrifice your queen unless you can see some fruit. If pawn takes queen, which is the natural move, you do have a knight check with this knight you've just captured, which is knight here. King goes into the corner, and then pawn or bishop finishes off the job. So yeah, and that should not be there. Or should it be there? Maybe it should be there, because otherwise people can't see because the computer doesn't play the mating line. So I think actually that's quite good to leave it there. Okay. Anyway, so I'm going to leave the rest for you. I'll just say, okay, if you want to have a go at this, pause. So in the game I actually played this, which is also mating, but there's a more direct mate in this position. myself against Antic. This is a game between the finisher and rapid variance. The finisher missed mate in this position, and rapid variance was able to come back and win this game. This is so pretty though. I'm going to have to show it to you. Okay, so we have 2 knights and a queen. So it's just got to be this wall of bishops. If we run away now, we'll never penetrate it later. We have to do now. We have to come in now while we're staring down at the wall of bishops. So we have to do this and this. And the point is, if the king goes back here, this is actually the easy part. We just go queen here, takes, takes, takes. He goes back. Because the problem is if I just go back here, that's no good. Because then he'll just come back again. And if I put a pawn here, he'll go king here. So I'll go pawn here. And then the knight will finish off the job. Okay, so that's nice. What the engine does not show you, and that's why I'm going through this puzzle with you, is what happens if the king goes here. And this is actually the reason why this puzzle is interesting. What do you do then? So then you do queen at f7 still, but black can just take it. And the problem is, if you go queen takes, the king is running away, and there's no way of catching it. So this is something really beautiful. You don't go queen takes. You've just given up your queen, and you say, the only reason was actually to distract that bishop from d7. And this is really pretty, because if the king goes here, knight takes bishop is checkmate. But if the king goes here, queen takes bishop is checkmate. So a really nice intermezzo. I'll make that the main line just because, yeah, so knight here, knight here, queen here takes, and this intermezzo. If the king goes here, obviously queen takes bishop. I'm going to leave that analysis there because that's not what the engine does when it gives you the puzzle. Okay, so that was this position. Okay, next one was JK the Bullfrog against Rapid Variance. JK the Bullfrog was white, and I think he found the mate here. Just trying, you can have practice on that one. So if you want to pause the video here, let's have a go at that one. Rapid Variance against JK the Bullfrog. In this one, as black, JK the Bullfrog missed the most direct mating opportunity in this position. The idea is if queen takes bishop, pawn takes queen is a double check. If king takes queen, we've got pawn here, king here, and knight here, checkmate. Well, what else are you going to do? If you go here, you're just going to lose immediately. To queen here, checkmate. So, yeah, I'm going through this variation because when you do it with the computer, it won't show that particular variation. Mugwort against Rapid Variance. Yeah, so Mugwort played a very safe move and completely winning move here, but he played queen at f3. But there was a more direct mate. So there we go at that. Next was Colwem against Issa Chess. Colwem found the move. Colwem is a very impressive player. He misses mates and then finds really impressive moves, which also mate. He found it's quite a difficult one. So you want to somehow seal the king up, because then you could get knight here. If you could seal it up, you could get knight here, checkmate. So the move is bishop there. So if he blocks, you have knight there, checkmate. Okay, and then again, we don't want the king running to the corner. So we do this to keep the king out. Okay, and this is actually what... sorry, we don't do that. We use a new knight, and the reason for that is just to keep this sealed off, and because we've got enough knights in hand. So Colwyn did all this. He did the difficult part of the puzzle. And he did go on to mate, but then he whoa, that's not correct. Okay, let's do this again. Bishop here, knight here. He did go on to mate, but he missed the mate in 1, which was knight here, and the king's got no more squares. So it's quite beautiful. Basically, this knight guards here, and these 2 knights, as we've seen before, guard this little square, and this knight guards there. And these 2 squares are blocked. Yeah. Those 2 squares are blocked by black's own pieces. So the thing is, we want to do a discover check, but then we lose our queen. So the really pretty idea is we go knight here. I feel like I'm spoiling this for you. But it's a really pretty idea, so I'll show it to you. Not quite sure what the point of this stream is, actually. Because if I don't show it to you, well, you just go away and do it. But if I do show it to you, then... Okay, so that's the idea. And now so it's a really pretty sort of discovery idea. Okay, it still leaves it as a puzzle for you, so it's still a mate in 4. So it's quite pretty how you lose your queen, but you win your queen back with check. Maybe worth saying, why can't he just go king here? There's always... There's always knight here, king here, but then we have knight here, check. And now the king is sort of sealed off, so that looks like it's just giving away a knight. But hang on a second, we have 2 pawns in hand, and the knight covers the light squares. So we can go queen here, check, and then use the pawns to cover the dark squares. Okay, this was the antic against variance only, the mate that he found. This is Mugwort against JK the Bullfrog. So it looks like the white king is quite precarious, but he's got all these pieces in hand, so he can come in, throw a bunch of checks, and win. So this is JK the Bullfrog against the finisher. This is really pretty. I guess this is a spoiler video. I think I just have to accept the fact this is a spoiler video and show you some of these mates. Because I think for beginning players it might be interesting. So starting with 31, let's make this a spoiler video. And you can see me mess up the mates. So Yalao says, show us, please. Okay, yeah. So the first 30, I'll say for beginning Crazyhouse players, you do the first 30 on your own. They're all quite straightforward, okay? And they're a nice challenge. Maybe I'll try showing you these ones, and because these are quite difficult now, I might mess up. So that's good. Okay, let's begin to do them. So when I look at this position, my king is in dire straits, but I have so many pieces in hand, I should have something. So I first look for checks, and I look at knight here check and knight here check. Knight here check looks promising because the king is forced to here, and then I can maybe swing a knight to here with check. Is that going to be worthwhile? Because then he has to take. And if the king ever goes here, I can take the rook with check. I don't know if that's useful or not. If it doesn't go there, then... Okay, so knight here, king here. Knight here, check. Takes. Oh, but then I've got a queen in hand. So I could dump the queen here. Yes, if he goes back to g8, I could dump the queen here. King comes up here. yeah, I could do something like queen takes rook, rook takes, rook here check, king here, and then this queen comes over to here, checkmate. Yeah, hi there, Mugwort. So that's why he can't go back to g1. So what he'll do is he'll come up to h7, takes. So the first 30, I was just refusing to tell people the answers. So I've decided that the last lot I'll try and work them out in front of everyone. Pawn, bishop, rook, queen. Okay, so now in this situation, queen here looks really powerful. And you want to have queen and rooks always want to be defended. So queen here, rook here, and coming in with here, checkmate is my idea. And it's the kind of magnet mate idea. We just have to draw the king out to this square. If he went back, just queen there would be checkmate. Queen here. And I wanted to go rook here and queen takes pawn checkmate, but he's stopping me by going the other way. But then I just go pawn here and definitely a queen to finish it off. Okay, so that's that one. JK the Bullfrog against the finisher. This is a very pretty mate that... was it the finisher found against JK the Bullfrog? Let's see. Yeah, I think the finisher found this against JK the Bullfrogs. Was that not correct? I thought it was. So we just do checks basically. Check. King. Why is it thinking? It's only got one move. We just kind of do the natural checks, and the reason is if ever he has to take here, we have a very nice idea of this knight's coming in and it's protected and defending a queen on h2. Okay, so the point is we can't... Okay, and if he ever swings this way, then we have queen here check, queen takes rook, or even rook. Rook here check, rook takes rook, king takes knight, and queen here checkmate. So he does have to take it, but then we have this very pretty finish. Ooh, I thought he was going to go king takes rook, and I was going to go knight here check, king back, queen here checkmate, because knight covers the escape route. But he's going for this one, so I still go check, I take this pawn, and checkmate. Okay, JK the Bullfrog against the finisher. Now in this sort of position, the immediate thing that strikes your eyes, we would like to go queen here check, king here, and knight here checkmate. Just instant. That should be what's on your mind. Because the queen and the knight just cut off the king. But it doesn't work because the bishop actually guards this square. So the really amazing move that JK the Bullfrog actually missed in this position, and then he went on to lose the game, is queen here check and queen takes knight. And the idea is with the two pawns, a knight and a bishop, and this knight also on the board, that's going to be enough. Okay, so let's just try and calculate it. The point is the king is actually in a box here. So we could use a knight to guard those two squares, and then we just need to guard the other two squares in the box. But we can't ever use a diagonal on this square, which means we're going to have to work on this king through these two squares. Now the king can try and escape the box like here, but then we've got this move knight here to stop him escaping the box. So knight here check, you just roll him out, bishop here, if he steps back, pawn here is checkmate, and he steps up, knight e4 is checkmate. He's stuck in the box. So it's a really pretty mate and really hard to find because it's not so natural to sack your queen in that kind of position. Erinyu against Vahavu. Okay, so we've done lots of mating puzzles. Now we're going to do some defensive puzzles. So white is under some severe attack. So g2 is under attack, but the bishop is hanging. So queen takes bishop would be natural, but you have to watch out for forks. There'd be knight here check, winning the queen. So the point of this puzzle is simply you must take that bishop, or this attack will be really strong. That's the most dangerous piece. It's on the same color as your king. It's trying to go bishop takes pawn check. Take it, and then you're fine. And that was the point of this puzzle. But you must take it with the pawn, not with the queen. And ONU did indeed, and I think he went on to win that game. This is a very tricky puzzle. It was my game against variants only, and this bishop had previously been here and threatening to checkmate me. Bishop takes rook, queen in the corner, checkmate. So what I did is a sneaky move. I dropped a pawn on d7 check. The idea is if he does king takes bishop, I've got queen at e8 checkmate. And that was sufficiently scary that variants only took that pawn. That was actually a slight mistake. He should have taken it with the king, and the king is completely safe. By taking it with the bishop, he gave me an opportunity for a defense. And that defense is this move. The reason it's a defense is because if the pawn takes, well, you're blocking off that diagonal, and that's very good. If the rook takes, again, you're taking away the pressure. And if the bishop takes, I can take the rook, and the point is he can't take back with either pawn, because otherwise I've got knight here check defended by the bishop, king takes bishop, and queen at e8 checkmate. If f takes e6 at f7, yeah. If f takes e6, so I have all the variations actually. So I should say there is a separate study with all the answers, with very detailed study. So maybe I should really work. I should just show you maybe I should just show you these variations now. And I'll share both these links with I shouldn't have shut it though. Okay. So if f takes e6, yeah, at f7 is good. Apparently rook takes g6 is also good. Just rook, so rook takes g6 takes, yeah. So at f7 is an interesting idea as well. I don't know. So if king takes so if king takes f7, knight at e5 is mating. Yes, that's the point. But king takes bishop. So the point is king takes bishop is always, even if bishop at f7, king takes bishop is always on. But it's a good point that Jusbold is making in chat, that often you want to drop a bishop in this kind of scenario, and the reason is because if black takes, you have what you want, and all's well and good. But a bishop is going to be a much nicer piece. So king takes d8, the bishop could take the rook, the bishop could take this pawn, so the bishop has much more flexibility. Now it turns out you're giving away too much, but in this particular position by giving away the bishop. But that's a very good point, that in general, bishop is definitely to be considered. In this particular position it turns out not, but it really is a very important point he's making. So but I'll delete that from that one. Okay. The next one is the third defensive puzzle. This is incredibly difficult. So I'll just say look at the answer. It was the game Rapid Variance against Mugwort, and the defensive resource that Mugwort had is queen at h6. So already this pawn is defended by the knight, but the idea of this is it hits this knight, so it takes, and suddenly you have some ideas on the white king, perhaps. Takes, rook. So this would just be a sample line. You win a pawn, you then take that knight with check, and well, so black is not completely losing. So, and the point of this, the point of this is if the knight takes the pawn, because knight takes f6 is actually the more threatening move, because if knight takes knight, bishop takes with check. So this is where the power of queen at h6 comes. Then you just simply take the bishop. So that's why queen at h6 is such a brilliant move. It prevents knight takes. But but very difficult. Okay, this is something, a very basic thing that happens a lot. You have a queen on d8 and your opponent's really annoying and attacks it. And you block it, takes, and then they drop another bishop, attacking your queen again. And you really don't want to push f6. I mean, you could, and this is what happened in the game. Black did indeed push f6. But another way of doing things is by having takes, the queen is actually in a slightly better position on e7, and it doesn't have to block. It could go here and have ideas on g2. So actually this, and queen block would be a very natural move and would be a huge mistake because of knight here check. And the reason that's a mistake is if king f1, well, I was thinking apparently queen takes b2 is then the strongest move. Yeah, didn't know. I would have been thinking, yeah, you don't want to queen trade because otherwise queen at e7 is a real issue. Yeah, so that's why you want to avoid the queen trade with this, and then the rook is hanging. But he could, I mean, what if he just did something silly like defending the rook? But black is apparently doing really well here. He's got, at this point, 3 pieces in white's camp, and white's got nothing in hand. So things are really bad. So another example, I should do it from the other study, of counterattack. This is a really interesting game between Pepelu as white and Hill RP as black. And Hill RP was getting peppered the whole game, but he had one opportunity. When Pepelu played pawn here, the rook is not pinned by a bishop, for example. And this was his moment. That rook, which is a defensive piece, could suddenly have become an attacking piece. And it's really fascinating actually to look at some of the variations. So rook takes, king takes. So we have now pawn, knight, and 2 bishops in hand. Well, we actually have a nice check. So advantage black, but white can say, well, hang on a second, I can take that knight back. And I'm not doing too badly myself because I'm covering f3 and you can't really do anything with h3 alone. And I've got some attacks on you with knight here, check, threaten, picking up your queen, and so on. So a very important move is actually to move that queen out the way. And the reason for this is because if knight at g6 check, which would be quite natural, that is actually not a good move because black can actually just take that knight, and that knight is actually the piece black needs to mate. So knight here check, king in the corner. You can use a diagonal to get the king out, and this looks mating, and indeed Stockfish says it is mating. King f3. I would go bishop at g2 check. This just forces the king further away. If king takes here, can we see the mate? We want queen here. Oh, okay, I cheated. Queen at g5 straight away is mate. Yeah, so queen at e5 would do the same eventually. But queen at g5 straight away. Notice 2 diagonal pieces 3 apart, like 2 knights 3 apart. It's a real power position when pieces are 3 apart like that. Bishops or knights. Because they control maximum space at that distance. Jusball says, what if bishop at h3 instead of queen g7? So bishop at h3 does seem, bishop at h3, pawn. The problem is knight here check is an issue, isn't it? Because he might be taking the queen, so we can never go to this or we lose the queen with check. So we have to go here or here. And the point is, whenever we go here, there's knight at f8 check here, and then rook at g8, or rook at h7. But rook at g8 is quite cute. Rook at h7 is actually even better. Okay, and that forces the king to there, and then we win the queen with check. And he's forced to take here, and then queen here, checkmate. So things go bad quickly. Yeah, rook at g8 is the problem. He can force the king onto g8. So queen g7 gets the queen out of this dangerous fork. And what we're saying is that this shows how dangerous the position is. That knight would be enough to mate. But knight on g3 is not enough, because if we take the knight here, then the king has an escape route. So then we do at h3. Finally, yeah, we stabilized our position. Now we can do at h3. So this is a move which both defends and attacks. I mean, if we do knight g3 immediately, I think the point is, again, you can just take it, and you can't take back. So if takes, queen at g2 is checkmate. Yeah. So yeah, sorry, I should have just said this is a straight up mating threat, which needs to be defended. So he attacks the piece which is defending it. Check. Blocks. Defends the piece. The null knight. So if you take it, I'm reinforcing the defender. And then quite a nice move for white is pawn at g2, I think. Stockfish doesn't like it at all, but I think it's a good move. Because if you don't move that rook, you are... yeah, the problem is if you don't move that rook, I'm taking, and I've got rook at h1, which you can't take, so you've got to take with king. So if you... yeah, why is it so dangerous? So if you do nothing, let's just see what the mate is. Queen at h1, takes, so it's not so... okay. And pawn at g2 will be mating. Okay, so it's quite a slow process. It's nothing completely direct. But the rook gets out of the way. Okay, but this is just really bad. Your takes, you can sack on here and then get in. Knight here, check. Queen here, check. Pawn here, and that's checkmate. So notice queens love the 7th rank, and you could go knight here, but then the king keeps on running. So the knight's doing a really good job keeping the king penned in, and pawn here is checkmate. So this isn't a forcing mate, as it were. It's not necessarily a forcing sequence, but honestly, I don't see any defense for white. So Pepperloo did dodge a bullet against best play here, but really best play is really hard to find. You know, queen g7 and then h3 and then getting in. Quite hard to find, but that was a nice counterattack. Yeah, so Pepperloo was winning the whole game, but with just leaving this one chance for rook takes g2, that things could have turned around against an engine at least. Another example of counterattack was pawn in training against Antic, but this is really difficult. Antic had a crazy difficult move here to find, which is, okay, my queen's under attack, but I'm just going to attack you back. So if you take, bishop takes, queen takes, and I've got another queen in hand, and things are looking bad. So takes. There's just basically you just have just enough to give trouble to this king, and the rook is pinned. So this is maybe just an example. I played it through too quickly, but just an example of you just trying to draw the king out and then push it back in, laying pieces on. And there is no defense. There are lots of variations, but yeah. Is that true there's no defense? Yeah, I think there's no defense. I mean, Stockfish is not calling mate at the beginning of the sequence, but I believe there's no defense. Okay, so that concludes all the defensive puzzles, and just remains to talk about 4 positional puzzles. So the first one is this. Mugwort against Rapid Variance. Rapid Variance played bishop e6. And the problem with that move is So what was the problem with bishop e6? So yeah, Monk wouldn't rapid variance. Okay, so he played bishop e6. So that was a mistake because pawn takes knight. Yeah. So although it looks like the e-file is really sealed up, if you take back with the bishop, if you don't take back with the bishop, you've got knight at d7 ideas. If you do take back with the bishop, suddenly these pins are opening. Knight takes d5, and if you did dare to open up this file, suddenly we have ideas. Knight takes c6 with opening up the check and attacking the queen. If you block, you're losing the queen. So because of all these threats along the e-file are actually a big deal, so the best move positionally is castles. So that's just a sort of positional thing. This is another sort of positional thing. So a very nice move, like played bishop to f6, going straight in for the attack. You have to be very careful with this move because black also has an attack with knight at f6 takes, and knight at e2 or knight at f3. The problem is we shared how you can drop a diagonal on g2 and then swing out. The thing is these bishops actually cover the square which you want to swing out to. So you've got to be knight e2. Now something's very interesting here, because if you go here, actually I think now black does have mate. Because a bishop here check, block, and you have to block with the knight. Takes, takes a bishop, and then you just draw the king out, take a pawn, draw the king out. Something worth saying. You don't want to take with the pawn, because if you take with the pawn, that you can go bishop check, block, and the knight can drop on that empty square. So you have to take with the bishop. So very subtle but important. Takes, takes, takes. Now again, you have to take with that bishop, not this bishop, because if you take with this bishop, the king doesn't have this square to run to, and that square is going to be a crucial square to run to. So if you take with this bishop, just simply here, and that's checkmate. So you have to leave the square open for the king. Takes, takes, queen here check, king's running. Turns out black still has mate, but it's going to be a long chase. So check, he tries to run. If he blocks, then things are going to get taken quite a lot. So if you try and block, rook takes d6, bishop takes, that's not a good idea because you're just letting the queen in. So we could just keep on taking any blockers actually, because the bishop can't defend because the queen just comes in. So you've got to keep running. Queen invades. And this is a long, I mean, it's a mate in 9, but the point is the king is actually sealed off in this region and it can never run back because of this pawn. So you can see why it looks really dangerous. Rook takes knight wins a knight. And did we need to do rook takes knight? Apparently you did. It looks like you should be able to mate without that, but Stockfish can't find anything. Okay, I see why. Because it looks like the king can find safety on a3, and black just doesn't run out of pieces. This knight there, check. Okay, the point is black's run out of pieces, so he needs that knight. Okay, if you take, then another rook will come in, so that would be no good. So he's trying to run back to safety. Takes another pawn, knight here, tries to run back to safety. Almost does it, but pawn here opens up the queen, and pawn there, checkmate. So it's a really long chase, about 20 moves, and all of that was just to show why, in this original position, taking the knight is fine, but you must not go to h1. You must go to g2 to stop bishop here and bishop takes. And in this position, yeah, black just doesn't have anything, because you're just one pawn short of mate. If you had another pawn, king back and checkmate. Yeah, one pawn short of mate. Well, actually, to be fair, they'd be running up as well, but things would look incredibly hairy. So all of that was just to say that bishop f6 is a good move, but only as long as you find king g2 in that critical position. So maybe a more solid move is bishop f3. So that was just a sort of positional study. Okay, so the next one to look at, Mohar 369 against Holloway. But just a nice move is bishop here. So you're threatening this pawn. You're really just you're dominating on the dark squares. So white could defend. You could take, and again try again. Why don't you try again on f2? Just trying to remember. Why can't I go bishop here again? Because of queen takes, knight takes, king takes, and you only have a queen in hand. Yeah, so it's still good, but apparently even stronger is bishop here. Just trying to get another diagonal piece, and white can get counterplay with this idea of opening up the h file. Takes. So white does have this dangerous look in chess. That would be lethal. Well, yeah, it wouldn't be lethal, but it would be at least a draw. But black can actually just block. Takes. Anyway, so it turns out that this is good for black. So bishop f2, very nice idea. Takes, and just really work on the dark squares. Try to pick up diagonal pieces and work on these dark squares. So is it 2 more to go? 2 more positional studies. So this one, yeah, there's a lot of pressure on f3, and the beautiful move here is just take it. Give up the queen for 2 pieces. Queen is worth 2 pieces, and those are 2 active pieces attacking the white king. And actually now black only has a queen in hand, and you can just lay all those pieces on around your king, bishop here, and so on. And white is completely fine. And finally, the very last one was the one we discussed right at the beginning of the video. The finisher found a very nice positional move in this position. Instead of going directly for the sacrifice, which as we discussed doesn't really bear fruit, he went for queen at b6. And then if white castles, the sacrifice still works. If white doesn't castle and blocks, you have bishop takes, knight, pawn takes, and a pawn at b2 follow-up. But then as we discussed at the beginning of the video, queen at c5 is also incredibly interesting. When you actually follow through the lines, it's incredibly interesting because after pawn at e3, takes, check, bishop d7, queen takes rook, bishop takes c6. Looks like white's going to be got the initiative, but there's a brilliant move for black in that position, which was queen takes bishop. Queen takes bishop, bishop takes, and let's go back to this again. Queen takes bishop takes. Oh, pawn at d2 was the critical move. He has to take, and now you check. And the problem is he has no blockers apart from queens. And he can't do this because of crazy ideas. Beautiful mates like this. And everything else is mating. So he has to actually block. And then there's still a very beautiful mate. And right at the beginning of the show, we said this was mating, and it was a mate in 6, but we hadn't calculated it. So let's end this recap by seeing how this wonderful line with queen at c5 instead of queen at b6, how we could mate in this position. Okay, so knight at c2. Why is this mating? Let's do this as a practice and calculation. So you've got a pawn, knight, bishop, queen. So obviously if the king just goes here, queen there will be checkmate. So king must go to one of these 3 squares. And what makes this difficult is there's so many possibilities. How do we get a handle on it? What I notice immediately though is if the king goes there, that feels like that should be mate. Because if the king goes here, I'm going to try and do it. We've got knight here, check, sealing the king off. if the king were to run here, we've got bishop here and queen here, checkmate. You can block, but queen here will be checkmate. If you takes in the hope of doing this and running, then hopefully that won't work. So I want queen here check. So it's either king takes knight or king here. And the idea is bishop here would be my follow-up. So we have if the king goes here, this goes here, so it has to go here. And he wants to go, oh, he can't. This bishop cuts him off. So bishop there is checkmate, yeah. So queen here, king takes knight, bishop, he has to go bishop here. Okay, now he's still got this one square to go to. But then I've got queen here, check. And I'm threatening queen takes pawn, so he has to keep running. And my visualization is reaching its limits. So we can still always go queen here, unless he runs to here, but then we've got queen here. So I think that's right. Okay, so queen here, king takes knight, bishop here. What I'm saying is he has to run to here, but then we have queen here. Now, as I said, if he runs to here, we've got queen here and queen here, checkmate. No, we don't, because the king can run back to there. But what I was worried about is actually he can go straight to here. But then I have this check. He either takes or goes back. But the point is, if he takes, I've got queen here, check, queen takes, checkmate. So he probably has to go back. And then queen here, check, king here. And knight here. Oh, haha, that's not possible. So I haven't found the nicest mate. Darn. I mean, I have this, but it's not what I wanted. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, where did I go wrong? Still mate in 4, but so here, okay, so at this point I do have mate in 5. That is the correct move. E takes d4 is the best defense. Takes. But after this move, I have mate in 4, and it's not queen at d2. So we saw that what I did would have been mating queen at d2, takes, bishop at d5 here, queen c2, mate in 5, a6 would be mate immediately, so it has to go here. It has to go here. Mate in 2 now at this point. I missed mate in 2. That's my problem. Here, here, and here. But going back to this earlier position, there is a neater mate in 3, which is pawn at f4. And if you take the knight, I've got bishop and queen coming in. In fact, if you take here, I've got queen here, checkmate. So pawn here, king takes pawn. e5, very nice move because it defends the knight. And so if you run here, queen here now is checkmate. So you have to run the other way. But now he wants to run to here. So I need queen h4, defended by the bishop. So that's, yeah. So that's checkmate. Okay. So that was all. Let's turn the engine off again. That's all if he runs. Gosh, all those calculations was just if he runs to here. So there's still 2 other possibilities, here and here. But if he runs to here, pawn at e2 might be an idea. Or knight at c3 is also a check, so that might be an idea, although you could just take... Oh, yes, yes. I feel that's right. So I'll do this. So my thought was if he takes the knight, I was going to go bishop here, check. And he can't turn down all these presents because otherwise my queen is coming in. And if he goes here, queen, there's checkmate. And if he goes here, then queen takes pawn, king here. I want to go bishop here. And that is checkmate, yes. Okay, that's good. But that's why he'll probably take the present straight away. And then I've got queen here, check. King here. And then pawn here would be checkmate. So he has to go the other way. I've got pawn here, check. Yep. And if he goes back there, then queen takes pawn is checkmate. So he has to run forwards. But then pawn there, check. He has to take it, no other move. Aha! Can't do that. Okay, that was almost embarrassing. Wait a second. So that was checkmate, but what my problem was he could just run forwards. I kind of want to find something neat as well as finding something. So that's upsetting. Huh. What am I missing? So after king takes knight, queen here, check. Yeah, that was getting checkmated. This is the line. Okay, obviously, yeah. I want to say this, obviously this is winning regardless, but still, let's find something concrete. So queen here, check. If king here, then we got queen takes bishop as well. But no, this is not pretty. So I'm trying to work out what I'm doing wrong. So queen to c2 check is correct. King a3. So it's a mate in 2. I was missing. There's a mate in 1 here. I'm missing. Wow. What's the mate in 1 I'm missing? Pawn here. Ah, just pawn here. How did I miss that? Oh, I didn't miss that. What I missed was in this line after king takes knight. You play the bishop here, check first to seal him up, and then if he keeps running, we have queen at b4 check, and if he doesn't keep running, if he blocks in some way, then queen at c2 is suddenly much more powerful because he's then forced to run the other way, and the last pawn comes with checkmate. Okay, so was this the right idea? After king to d1, which is mate in 6, that is mate in 5. Oh, it's not, because king d2 stays safe. And I hadn't got around to calculating that. So we do need pawn at e2, apparently. If king takes c2, then we have knight at b4, and king b3, queen at c2, king takes knight, and is bishop. Okay, so the problem is the king is still running to here. A5 check. So the point is if king b5, queen to c5, king here, queen here, or if king here, queen here. So that's the idea with that. But if king here, then bishop here is checkmate. Okay, so just to go again. If king here, queen here, check. King here, queen here, checkmate. Okay, so really important to seal the king in before delivering that final blow. and the knight doesn't work because the knights end up as being a protection for the king. So that's an important principle. Okay, so then the last line to consider was king to d2. So pawn, knight, bishop, and queen. How do I mate? Okay, so I remember seeing earlier, and unfortunately it might show, that bishop here was the move. So why would bishop or pawn are both good, but so the idea is that if the king goes here, then we have knight here check. Pawn takes knight, knight takes pawn. This is the point of the bishop, is it defends that knight. And if the king goes back, we have a queen sweeping across with checkmate. And if the king comes this way, then I would like to say we have something promising here with checkmate. So that's why the king can't run back. Can't run back here either, because I just drop a pawn, and you're going to have to eat that knight at some point. So let's just eat the knight straight away. And now the problem for you is I've got knight here check. And if you run this way, you're getting mated. If you run back, I've got what if we run back and try to run away? I've got a pawn and a queen. So pawn, king here, queen, takes. Oh yeah, that gets mated. Yes, that's very satisfying. Pawn here check, king here, queen here check, stopping you from running away, and then rook here checkmate. So that's very satisfying. See how many? It's only mate in 6, but so many lines. If you run there, you got checkmated. So if you try and take this, now we have to try and find mate with only a queen and a pawn. It makes me slightly nervous. Queen here check. If king here, then pawn here will be checkmate. So king has to go here. And ooh, queen there check. Wow, look at this. King has to go here, and queen there check is checkmate. That knight is doing an awesome job defending the b3 square. So just to check the engine on, just to see that was indeed, I just did calculate that correctly. Knight at a1 is indeed the move. King takes c3, queen at c2, queen c5, queen a5, yay. Okay, so that's quite, really very beautiful variation. Okay, I think that was a good way to end the stream. I'll share with you the puzzles to practice yourself against the computer. There is also an answers link, which is this one, and I'll post those both with the video. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed. Thanks everyone for watching, and oh, the most important thing is do sign up for Season 5 if you're interested. That's of the Crazyhouse Team League. Okay, hope that's been fun. Thanks everyone for watching.